got so big that you hold of this kind.
Hello, and welcome to my spoiler-free first impressions review of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. I'm officially on the other side of 9. It has been a long road since 2015, and it's wild to be on this side of things. Firstly, I'd like to say that my number one recommendation if you are watching this review is to don't watch this review. Don't watch this, don't read reviews, don't go off of what people will tell you. Don't try to gauge how you're going to feel about the movie before you go. Just go. For some of you, that might be difficult if you have to wait into further in the weekend or you have to wait a week. But at a certain point, it'll become unavoidable. But this, it's not necessarily a movie. Well, this is a movie largely about your expectations. But it's also going to be the type of movie where I just... this is a movie that I just want everyone to form their own feelings on, and I don't want them to go off of some review they read in a magazine or something. That you would really benefit from kind of seeing how you would feel about it. But if you're here and you're still watching, you do really want to hear what I have to say. So these are some things that I think don't give away too much about the movie if you kind of want to know what you're walking into. This movie very clearly defines some things, and it very clearly defines some things that we have been talking about for 2 and for 4 years. There's some things in this movie that are just not left ambiguous. Expect definitive answers to some questions you're having. Some questions have been answered far more definitively than I ever thought they would in the film. Secondly, it is a J.J. Abrams movie. Start to finish, this is a movie made by J.J. Abrams. If you liked Force Awakens or didn't like Force Awakens, you know, either way you thought it was alright, but like Last Jedi is the sequel trilogy for you, like is what the sequel trilogy is for you, this is going to feel different. And I don't mean that in a story sense, and I don't mean that to give away whether or not this is or isn't what The Last Jedi told you. It's just, it doesn't feel like a Rian Johnson movie. You know, this is not slow. And I don't mean that as an insult. There's a lot of really good moments in Last Jedi where you can take a breath, but this movie, you don't take a breath. There's the crawl, and then the first scene, and then the movie goes, and the movie goes, and the movie goes, and the movie goes, and occasionally you'll find a scene where you're like, this is the breather scene, and it's not the breather scene, because there are no breather scenes. The movie will just go. Personally, I love that. I love a breakneck pace movie. I loved how I was on the edge of my seat because something was constantly happening. Not everyone's going to like that. A lot of people will probably feel like the movie does too much, goes too fast, doesn't give you a break. So it's just, do you like movies that go, 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 or do you like movies that let you breathe? If you like movies that let you breathe, this one doesn't do it. If you like movies that are a roller coaster ride, this movie's going to be your roller coaster ride. And that's a very J.J. Abrams thing. It's a very J.J. Abrams thing in that it's very nostalgia heavy. There's a lot of scenes that are purely there for nostalgia's sake. There's a lot of lines that are purely there for nostalgia's sake. That's either going to work for you or it's not going to work for you. There's some stuff that you can either perceive as really corny, too obvious, maybe even a little bit awkward, but then there's going to be other people who are like, no, I love that part made me cry. So again, it depends. How are you going to respond to nostalgia? Personally, I'm exhausted. Like, I feel very subdued in this review, and I don't mean that as a reflection of my enjoyment of the film. I'm just up several hours later than I usually am, so I'm tired anyway, and I was exhausted. Like, halfway through Rise of Skywalker, I was emotionally drained already, and so then to have to, like, take in the second half of the movie, which was even more emotional than the first half of the movie, it was just a lot. Like, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the movie right now. I'm seeing it again tomorrow. I am very excited to see it again tomorrow. But I'm just so exhausted. It's really hard for me to really put into words how I'm feeling about what's going on with the film right now. If you're concerned about Leia and like how Leia was handled, I think Leia was done the best they could do under the circumstances that they had. I don't think Leia was perfect. I think there were some parts that were pretty obvious. It's pretty clear that they were taking her dialogue from chopping up other scenes. Most of her lines of dialogue, most of the things she says in the film are like 3, 4, 5 word sentences Like, she never really has, like, a conversation with anyone. And that's just the nature of the beast with how they chose to use Leia in the movie. I don't personally blame the movie for that. I don't personally blame J.J. Abrams for that. It's part of the sad tragedy that Carrie Fisher has died, and ultimately, regardless of what that means for a film, the true tragedy is that Carrie Fisher passed on. That in of itself is an insurmountable loss. What that does to a movie is secondary. But I think they were respectful with what they did. I think they did the best they could with what they had. So I think Leia's representation within the film is what I expected it to be, and I think they did. I think they did as good a job as they could do. I won't say that it's perfect. I won't say that people won't have a problem with the story. I just would simply respond with I literally don't know what else they could have done with it. I think that they managed to do something really emotional and really meaningful and something I really appreciated with her in a way that was going to be really difficult. That's just kind of a thing. Like, you have to be aware of what the situation is as we go into 9 with that. I kind of alluded to this earlier, and I know it's been a big thing. If you are a part of the Star Wars online discourse, either in YouTube or on Twitter or anywhere else, you're probably wondering, does Rise of Skywalker undo The Last Jedi, or does it carry on from The Last Jedi? I can't answer that without spoiling the film, right? If it's everything is exactly like it was in The Last Jedi, then that's a spoiler. And if it's this movie completely turned Last Jedi on its head, that's a spoiler. So on a spoiler-free review, I can't answer that question. The only thing I can say is what I already said, which is stylistically, JJ is a very different director and a very different writer than Rian Johnson. I love JJ Abrams. I love his TV shows. I love his films. I'm a huge fan of J.J. Abrams. I adored The Force Awakens. I really like what he does stylistically in The Rise of Skywalker. I like what J.J. Abrams does more than Rian Johnson, and that's not because I hate Rian Johnson. I have no problem with Rian Johnson. I think he's incredibly talented. I think he did a great job with The Last Jedi. But in terms of personal taste, J.J. is more my personal taste than Rian Johnson is. If Rian Johnson is more your personal taste, Rian Johnson didn't make the movie. So it's just another thing to keep in mind. At the end of the day, I liked it. I liked it, and I'm kind of afraid to say it. So I haven't watched this video in a long time, but I recall 2 years ago sitting in this chair talking to you guys about my first impressions of The Last Jedi. And I walked out of that movie and I did a review just like this that was spoiler free, and I said that I don't know how I feel about The Last Jedi. There were some things I was working through, some things I wasn't sure if I liked, but I was convinced that everyone else was going to love the movie, and I was going to be like the only person on the planet that had problems with The Last Jedi. Like, I watched The Last Jedi and I was like, this is the movie that people want. And boy, was I wrong. I think it was a movie that a lot of people wanted, but it was also not the movie that a lot of people wanted. I'm walking out of The Rise of Skywalker, and I feel like I really enjoyed the film, and that people aren't. I'm afraid to look at the internet. I'm not going to look at Twitter until tomorrow. I would really caution you about reading reviews because I think this is something you should just take in with open arms. But that said, the second time I saw The Last Jedi, even though I had complications, or even though I had complicated feelings on it, I loved it the second time. I fell in love with The Last Jedi the second time I saw it. I'm going to see The Rise of Skywalker again tomorrow, and I might walk out of that movie a second time and feel differently, just like I did with Last Jedi. But right now, I loved it. I think it's a hot mess. I'd said on a couple of our streams that I thought The Rise of Skywalker was going to be a hot mess, and it's a matter of whether or not it was going to be the world's greatest hot mess or the world's worst hot mess, but it was going to be one or the other. I think it was a great hot mess. It is a giant smoking hot mess, but I think it's a great giant smoking hot mess. But I guess that depends on whether or not, you like that. So there you go, internet. I liked The Rise of Skywalker. That's what I have to say about it. I think it's going to throw a lot of people for the loop, and I will be back tomorrow afternoon, evening, sometime after I've seen the movie again, and we'll have a discussion further. But those are my kind of general thoughts. I really don't know what else I can say about the movie without spoiling it. And again, the subduedness is, I am up multiple hours past my bedtime, and that movie was just tiring. in a way that I enjoy. So this is not negativity. I am so worn out by a movie that I felt fulfilled by. I hope you guys enjoyed it, but let me know what you thought about it. Either way, I say that with much trepidation. If you're not already, please follow us on all the socials that I may or may not never visit again. And until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.